Hi there, I'm Ulrich, your furry musician known as DayMusic, aka the Paw Inspector, and welcome to episode 4 in my ZGameEditor visualizer tutorial series. I wanted to make the topic of this video its own video so that people can easily find it and reference it when they need it. As such, this is probably going to be a short video, and what is it we're going to be talking about in this video? We're going to be delving deeper into creating various masking effects with ZGameEditor visualizer. If you remember from the previous video, I touched on the topic of creating masks momentarily, and I used a basic square shape mask. But what about other shapes as masks? What about using your own images as masks? Let's get into that. What is a mask? I explained it a bit in the last video, and I will reiterate the question here for those of you who have not seen the previous video in this series. A mask is an effect used in photo and video editing programs to indicate a selected region or regions that you don't want to be affected by whatever changes you are going to make. Some programs will invert this usage and refer to the mask as the area you specifically want to edit. If you think of the mask like a cartoon robber wearing a ski mask, they put on the mask because they don't want their face to be seen. But there are still holes for their eyes and nose so they can still see and breathe. The mask technically blocks the things while allowing other things is the secondary action. It is because of this that a mask in programs is a binary function. 1 and 0, yes and no, white and black. Anywhere you don't want to keep should be black, and anything you want to keep will be white. So let me load a quick mask effect to show you what I mean. And that can be done very simply by loading a basic image layer under the image effects category, and instead of loading an image source, select solid color at the bottom of the layer. By default, it will create a white square. I'm going to name this layer mask shape, and then set it as a buffer layer instead. I'll put it into another image layer, of course. When I do this, you won't really notice anything different, but in the preview window, if you change the output to the output of the buffer layer, you can see exactly what I was talking about. Black is the masked area, white is the accepted area. By the way, I should mention now that this video, being part of the tutorial series, we'll be glancing over a bunch of features that I talked about in previous videos, like how buffer layers work in the last video, or a detailed breakdown of the entire ZGameEditor visualizer and the preview window in the first video. If you'd like to check those out, I recommend it so that you can follow along more easily if you aren't too familiar with everything about ZGameEditor visualizer. Now that we talked about what a mask is, how do we actually use it? Because right now, what we have is just the mask shape. If we tried adding anything to this, it wouldn't do anything. I'm going to use this picture here, and the goal is going to be for me to isolate just the paw in the corner. I'm going to name this layer mask image and move it to the left of the layer stack, between the mask shape layer and the background layer. Then I'm going to add the layer with the actual masking logic, Boolean mask, under the blend category. I'll name that simply mask. And I'm going to move that between the background layer and the mask image layer, and then set that one to buffer. The image source for that layer I'm going to set to the output from the mask shape layer. Then for the final output, the mask shape out layer, I'm going to change to the mask layer. And there you go. You can see that the masking is already working, but it isn't fully encompassing the paw just yet. In the mask shape layer, we can reposition the mask using the position and size sliders. If I wanted to make it even more specifically around the paw, I can use the width and height sliders as well. And then there you go. You've now taken an image and cropped it using a mask. You can transform the output of the mask by using the transform settings in the output layer. What if you wanted a different shape mask though? Good question. First and foremost, in the mask shape layer, you can increase the rounded slider to change the square shape to a full circle, and then you can use the height and width sliders to make it more ovular. But what about other shapes? Don't worry, I got you. Let's change this image layer to a HUD prefab layer real quick. In the HUD prefab layer, open the shape drop-down menu, and then in the basic shape sub-menu, you have a selection of basic shapes you can use. The first shape is a circle, so there's a slightly easier way to make a circle. And I point out the circle because for some reason the circle is the only basic shape with full opacity. The other shapes for some reason have some slight transparency to them, and you can see that if you enable the transparency view button here, or right click a layer and select show background pattern in preview, and you'll notice these shapes become slightly more transparent. You can fix this by setting the output layer to pre-alpha mode, and that fixes the alpha issue. But the alpha slider no longer works correctly. You could also double fix this whole situation by grouping the mask shape layer with the HUD image layer to the right of it, leave it in its post-process effect state, and then set the layer to pre-multiply alpha. Make sure to uncheck the pre-alpha mode toggle in the other image layer, that way the alpha slider will still work. But these shapes are too basic. I want to use my own images as mask shapes, I hear you say. I told you, I got you, gosh! Lucky for you, the Yulin mask shape effect force creates a Looking for you, the Yulin mask effect force creates a mask out of images. Let's move back down to just the one layer in the mask shape buffer group. We'll change the HUD prefab effect back to the basic image layer. For the image source, I'm going to choose my little dancing boy to show that it works with GIFs as well. But you'll probably want to use PNGs, GIFs, or I believe BMP files work as well. You're going to need to update the Yulin mask image source back to the mask shape output, and then you will immediately see that, well, something is happening. It's sort of using the image as a mask, but only certain colors offer more alpha conversion properties. So here's what we're going to do. Max out the lightness slider of the mask shape layer, that way you've turned your image into a negative mask, making it completely black, which might be what you want, but you can do that without needing the mask. What we want to do is have a different image appear within the shape of the mask. If we switch the preview to the output of the mask shape layer, you will see that it all looks black, but actually, if you enable transparency view, what we have here is our black image over the alpha channel, which means you can invert this image still and it will be white. By the way, it's probably late to say this in the 4th video of this series, but I apologize for over-explaining things sometimes. I basically wrote down my entire thought process, including this part about me apologizing, so that I could make sure I didn't miss anything. I mean as clear and concise as possible, and that everyone is on the same track as me. Anyway, we're going to add a new layer, make it the dub switcher inverter in the post-process category, name that mask invert. Move it over to the left and group it with the mask shape layer by removing that one from the buffer, and then set the mask invert layer to buffer. Again, update the Yulin mask layer to have the mask invert layer as the image source. And right now we should be seeing the same thing we saw before. Our image as a negative mask, we need to invert that by maxing out the invert red, invert green, and invert blue sliders. And then there you go. You should be seeing your image as a masked area of the masked image that you chose. This is sort of the same animation style you might see in some shows, like Chowder is the first one that comes to my mind, where the patterns on some characters' clothes don't follow the character as they move around. The pattern is stationary and the clothes are masking the pattern or whatever. So yeah, I guess if you wanted to recreate that effect for an animation you want to have as your music video in ZGameEditor Visualizer, maybe export your clothes layers as their own white mask layer and use that as your mask. Actually, let me go ahead and switch this over to an MOV image source so that we can see if it works with that as well. There you go, works just fine. If you watched my previous videos, you remember that while WebM videos are supported, the alpha channel in them are not retained. Only MOV videos have their transparency retained. Remember, you can reposition your masked image by using the output layer's transforming options. You'll also want to make sure the image you're masking over fits the frame of the video, or else moving the mask in the mask shape layer will cause it to disappear earlier than it should. And that's pretty much all there is to know about masking in ZGameEditor Visualizer. Or is there? Tune into my next video where I will be discussing various methods in which you can add text or lyrics into your videos. I've covered some of the various text effects ZGameEditor Visualizer has to offer, but getting the text to show up on screen in interesting ways, say for lyric videos, can be accomplished a number of ways, and I will be sharing with you some of the ways I've found and have used myself. Until then, my name is Ulrich, your furry musician known as Day Music, and I will see you all next time.